What karma is a bitch incident did you witness firsthand? My 4-year-old daughter was wearing a princess costume randomly and also was wearing socks. She climbed onto the coffee table all while I'm telling her not to, warning her that she might fall. I hear, "I'm not going to fall to BMWH." One of the many times I've been able to console her with a nice heartfelt, "Told you so."
That's a classic kid move. They think they can do anything, even when you warn them. It's funny, but at the same time, you want to be there for them after they fall. Moments like that show how kids just push their limits, and sometimes they need to learn the hard way. It's part of growing up, I guess. It's nice you could console her after.
When my middle nephew was about 6, he had a bad impulse control problem. Once when I was visiting, his older brother did something fairly minor that pissed him off, so he cocked back his arm and threw a punch at his brother as hard as he could and slammed his fist directly into the wooden door frame instead.
That sounds like a classic kid moment. I remember when my younger cousin acted out too. One time, he was mad about losing a game and kicked a chair, only to end up hurting himself instead. Kids sometimes let their emotions get the best of them, and the aftermath can be pretty funny, even if it's a little chaotic in the moment. Just part of growing up, I guess.
The bully girl in preschool class would run at other kids, making the nastiest face you've ever seen, then hit them over the head. She was the meanest little kid I've ever met. The shyest boy accidentally upset her. She started running at him from across the room as fast as she could. Terrified, shy boy instinctively braced himself against the table behind him and lifted his foot up to keep her back. She ran gut first at full speed into the bottom of his shoe. The impact was like a karate kick to the stomach. The shy boy had no idea that would happen and hadn't even intended to defend himself. Bully girl went crashing to the floor backwards with the wind knocked out of her, and it took about 5 seconds before she could even catch her breath enough to cry. Me, the adult of duty, took a sudden interest in the wallpaper and pretended not to have seen any of it. That girl needed to learn the hard way, and the shy boy needed to learn to stand up for himself. Experience is the best teacher. I let karma rule the day.
I remember a similar thing in school. There was this kid who thought he was tough and picked on a quieter kid all the time. One day, the quiet kid just snapped and stood his ground. The bully charged at him and tripped over his own feet, smashing into the ground. It was sort of funny, but also a wake-up call. Sometimes, you just need to let things play out. That day taught everyone a lesson.
Just got off jury duty like 2 hours ago. Listen to this woman claiming she got hurt in a car accident, wanted money for lost wages, pain, etc., to the amount of $127,000. From a 20-year-old kid, something was clearly off, which 11 out of 12 jurors decided. We awarded her $7,350. As we left the courtroom, the tip staff guy pulled me aside. Turns out the woman could have settled with the kid and his father for $60,000 before the trial started, but didn't. Greed never pays, kids.
That's an interesting experience. Jury duty can definitely bring out some wild stories. It's surprising how far some people will go for money, especially when the evidence doesn't back them up. Sounds like the jury made the right call. The woman had a chance to settle but chose to push for more. Just goes to show how greed can lead to bad decisions. Sometimes it's just not worth it.
In high school, a buddy and I found an old shoe in my gym's locker room. I looked around, made sure no one was looking, and threw it a few aisles over. I heard a kid yell, "WTF?" Someone threw a shoe at my head. We laughed and walked towards the exit, about 50 feet away from where I originally threw the shoe. As we get to the door, I get hit on the head by the same shoe. Instant karma. I wasn't even mad, LOL.
That's classic. You think you're being funny, and the universe just bites back. You throw a shoe, and then out of nowhere, it lands on you. It's like a weird game of dodgeball but with a shoe. Can't help but laugh at how quick things can turn around. It's those moments that stick with you, just a slice of high school chaos.
I went to Hawaii with my mom and stepfather for vacation. I was 12, and we signed up for surfing lessons. The car ride there, my stepfather kept saying, "Now parole model, I just want to warn you of something. You might not be able to do this. You're a girl, so your center of gravity is higher. I'm a boy, so my center of gravity is lower. Don't be too upset when I'm standing on the board longer than you. It's just science, okay? I'll be better, but it's okay because it's not your fault." Screw him. I managed to ride a few low waves all the way to shore while he couldn't even get on his feet. I mean, I was nothing fancy on those small waves because I had never done it before, but it was way better than him gonna stand than instantly falling every single time. He wouldn't talk to me on the car ride back whenever I try to bring up what he said earlier.
That sounds like a classic moment. Your stepdad really missed the mark there, huh? It's funny how people underestimate others based on stereotypes. Falling on the surfboard must have been frustrating for him, especially after his comments. It's cool you managed to ride those waves, even if it was just a bit. Silence in the car says a lot when the tables turn. Sometimes, winning feels better than anything else.
Ooh, I have a good one. I was getting into my car in the post office parking lot, and I Jewish touched the car to my right with my door. The two young men sitting inside glared at me. I took a look at their door, and no visible dent or scratch appeared. The guys pull out, blocking me in, and threw an orange at my car. An orange, you think? Yes, an orange. I cannot make that shit up. He speeds off toward the road, giving me the finger along the way. Shortly after, I heard a loud screeching brake sound and a boom. I drove over to it, and sure enough, the orange thrower hit another car, leaving pretty decent damage on both vehicles. I make my way to the road slowly, pointing and laughing as I pass the scene. I am giving the middle finger one last time before going about my merry business. Edit, spelling, and formatting.
That's a pretty wild story. I can't believe the guy threw an orange. It's one thing to be angry, but that takes it to another level. Then he crashes after trying to act tough. I mean, you touched his car lightly, right? People can be dramatic. The whole scene is kind of funny, seeing his rage turn into a messed up situation. You can't help but feel a bit amused by it all.
Battle buddy in Iraq didn't want to wake up for out roving guard shift on time. He needs waking up like 3 times and then gives me shit about him being late. He lights a cigarette outside, and I tell him to put it out since it's not a good idea to tell people where we're at. Eliston, shut the fuck up. It's 3 in the morning, no one's gonna do shit, Tony. He never got the last Ian tonight out because the mortar started hitting. It's literally the quickest I've ever seen someone proved right.
That sounds intense. It's wild how quickly situations can change. I had a similar moment with a friend during a camping trip. We thought we were safe until a bear showed up. We were joking around until we realized the seriousness of it. It's funny looking back, but in the moment, it was all adrenaline. Just shows that when you least expect it, life can throw you a curveball.
Just happened yesterday. My company has a cafeteria in the building, and I'm in line at the grill. This guy just blatantly cuts in front of about 5 people and places his order, a turkey bacon Swiss melt. I was next in line and decide since I'm at work to say nothing and just let it go. Another cafeteria employee comes over to help the guy working the grill and takes my order, which is also a turkey bacon Swiss melt. So the initial grill cook sees the second guy start making the melt and takes the next person's order and the next until everyone in line has placed their order. The guy who cut is now waiting for his melt too, which the initial grill cook never started making because he saw the second guy making one. So I and everyone behind me all get our food before the guy who cut, who ends up waiting an additional 5 to 10 minutes.
That's a classic cafeteria moment. People cutting in line always expect to be served immediately. It's kind of satisfying when they end up waiting longer. I've had my fair share of similar situations, just choosing to let it go most of the time. Sometimes it's just easier to focus on what you can control, like enjoying your meal while the guy who thought he could skip ahead is stuck waiting.
I was riding my bike in a protected bike lane with the right of way through an intersection. A guy in a Jeep blew through the red light, waving his middle finger at me and yelling to get off the road. I damn near hit him and laid the bike down. There was a sheriff at the top of the hill. He came screaming down, told me to follow him. The guy in the Jeep was arrested for reckless endangerment. Some faith in cops restored.
Sounds like a pretty intense moment. Glad you managed to avoid a serious crash. It's nice to hear that the sheriff jumped in and handled the situation. It's a reminder that not all drivers respect cyclists, but at least sometimes there's backup when things get out of hand. Makes you think about road safety a bit more.
Open spar in my gym. Guy comes in to unleash his fury taught by Sensei YouTube. Goes with the dude at 100%. Dude backs off and tells guy to calm down and keep it at 20%. He agrees and goes 100% again. Dude backs off and gets called a pussy by guy. An instructor offers to take his place. Guy doesn't know it's an instructor. They agree to go light. Guy comes at him 100%. Instructor warns him to practice control. They go again. Guy goes 100%. Instructor grabs him and knees him in the ribs. Guy slumps over and sits for the next hour. Guy shows up 3 months later to just watch. TLDR. Mess with the bull, you get broken ribs.
Seems like that guy really didn't get the message. You'd think after the first warning he'd learn to chill. Instead, he just kept charging in like he was training for a championship. And then he gets taken down by someone he didn't even take seriously. Funny how a little humility goes a long way. Now he's just a spectator, probably wishing he'd listened. Sometimes it's better to keep it cool.
I was sitting on top of the sofa back, and my brother thought it would be funny to push me so that I'd fall backwards onto the sofa. I did, with my legs continuing straight upward and basically kicking him in the balls. It was one of my favorite moments because it was completely guilt-free on my part and instant karma for him.
That's a classic sibling moment. There's always a bit of rivalry and pranks between brothers. It's funny how things can turn around so quickly. One minute you're just chilling, and the next, it's an accidental attack. It's good that you could laugh it off afterward. Those little moments can really stick with you, turning into funny stories later on. It sounds like you both had a good time despite the mishap.
I was working as a carpenter building a house. I had a 4x8 sheet of plywood ready to nail into place. A guy came up to me with his arm wrapped with a handkerchief and bleeding. He was going to the ER. I reached behind me to knock on wood and prevent me from getting hurt on the job. The damn sheet of plywood fell on me. Never did that again.
That's a pretty wild story. Just trying to be superstitious and it backfires. It's funny how things work out like that. You think you're being careful, and life has other plans. I can see how that would make you change your habits. Sometimes you just gotta laugh it off, even if it hurts a little. Glad you're okay though.
Was leaving the grocery store about 10 years ago. It was really rainy and very windy. I got into my car and saw a lady get into her car after leaving her grocery cart, just pushed away from her car a little bit. The cart corral was just a couple space over, but she didn't want to bother. This always drives me crazy because of its laziness and selfishness. Well, she pulls out and has to stop in a minute at the end of the lane because cars are coming. A long, heavy gust of wind grabs her cart, and it rolls close to 60 feet, gaining momentum, before slamming right into the side of her car. I could see the dent it made from halfway across the lot. It was as if God grabbed the cart and rolled it in her to teach to put it up next time.
I remember a similar situation. A friend of mine was in a parking lot, and he saw someone leave their cart out. He pointed it out, saying how annoying it was. Just then, the wind picked up and sent the cart rolling right into another car. It was kind of wild to see. My friend just chuckled and said maybe that was the universe's way of teaching a lesson. Sometimes it pays to do the little things.
I was at the mall doing some last-minute Christmas shopping and heard a commotion by one of the escalators. Some punk was berating and yelling in a girl's face, calling her all kind of names, and then screamed at the top of his lungs, "I'm glad I cheated on you with your sister and gave you herpes." He turned around to walk down the escalator, tripped and bounced down them. Everyone started laughing at him, even the poor girl who was in tears. He stood up and looked at everyone laughing, started to say something, but an older gentleman stepped out of the crowd and sucker punched him. Turns out she was with her father when the kid decided to break up. Father heard the whole thing.
It's wild how things can escalate. I was once at a coffee shop when a guy started yelling at his girlfriend about something dumb. People were trying to ignore it, but it was awkward. Then, out of nowhere, his buddy steps in, calms him down, and they all just share a laugh. Sometimes, it takes one person to change the mood. The tension just drops. Makes you think about how quickly things can flip.
In college, some girl pushed my roommate or of her way on the stairs, almost knocking him down them. At the next landing, she tripped and rolled down the whole flight of stairs. My roommate and I both carefully stepped over her and continued walking as we heard her yelling at us for not even helping her up.
That's a classic college moment. People can be so wrapped up in their own world. It's funny how she nearly took my roommate out, but as soon as it happened to her, it was a different story. Guess she wanted help when it suited her. We were just trying to avoid a scene. Sometimes it's better to just keep moving, you know?
A bunch of my friends were camping over a long weekend. The way into the campsite was a narrow dirt road that was barely wide enough for 2 cars. You usually either stop to give way or pass by slowly. Well, a car came roaring along and on passing clipped the side of my friend's car, taking his side mirror off. They continued on without a care in the world. The next morning we see a car being towed into the camp that had clearly T-boned a tree from the way the front was bent in half. Guess whose car it was? Karma served.
That sounds like a wild trip. It's always a bit frustrating when people are careless on the road. It's interesting how things come full circle though. Your friend lost a mirror, but then we see that same driver get taken out by a tree. Just a reminder that actions have consequences, even if they don't show up right away. Makes you think twice about driving like a maniac next time.
I was about 13 years old on a roller coaster at Six Flags. I thought it would be funny if I spit in the air, knowing it may hit someone sitting a few rows back. Well, it did. It hit the guy sitting right behind me. I heard him shout, "Oh, what the fuck," and then hear the sound of him hocking up a large loogie. He leaned forward and spit this monstrous amount of spit right on the back of my neck. Needless to say, I never did that again.
That's one way to learn a lesson. It's wild how a simple prank can turn on you. It's all fun and games until someone gets hit. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend spitting on roller coasters anymore. The guy must have been pretty annoyed. Just shows that you need to think ahead sometimes. Good to see you took that experience and moved on. Wouldn't want to go through that again.
One time I was driving on the highway, and I passed an unmarked cop car. About maybe 10 minutes later, a car shoots past me, going at least 30 to 50 kilometers per hour faster than me. I started to do a mental countdown: 5, 4, 3, 2. The unmarked cop car shoots past me, going so fast that CB antenna was almost touching the pavement. I had fun driving by that ticket scene. Also, one time I was driving home late at night with a friend. An asshole came behind us, honking and flashing his high beams to get us to move. So we move over, and he speeds off, giving up the bird. A few kilometers later, We drive past him as he is getting a ticket. My friend and I wave.
It's always interesting how things play out on the road. That moment with the unmarked cop must have been intense. I can relate to the late night story too. It's wild how some drivers think they own the road. Seeing that guy getting a ticket after being a jerk is kind of satisfying. Just shows karma has a way of catching up with people, even when you least expect it.
Was in the car with a couple friends once going down the highway. Next to us is a convertible full of teenage girls, all texting on their cell phones, including the driver. My buddy is driving past them and I shout, "Get off your phone. You're driving." They all put their phones down and yell at me to shut the fuck up, then sped off. What they didn't notice was that we were approaching an intersection. My buddy slows the car down, but the convertible keeps going, right into the back of the car in front of them. All three of us are cracking up at the red light, watching the driver of the convertible freak out. TLDR, getting off your phone gets you in car wrecks.
It's kind of wild how things play out sometimes. We were just driving, and I couldn't help but say something to those girls. Then, boom, they crashed right in front of us. It was unexpected, but also kind of funny seeing how they reacted. Just a reminder that being distracted while driving can lead to some serious problems. You never know what might happen when you're not paying attention.
TD, I got a good one. At a family dinner, my brother was close to a tray of cheeses and breads, making a mega bite with all his favorites in it. There was one type of cheese that is his absolute favorite, and he was keeping it for this finale bite. I asked him to bring me a piece of cheese with him. He quite rudely says no in a very loud, asshole way in front of everyone. I smile and tell him, I'm not even going to get pissed because karma's going to take you down. As I finish my sentence, he accidentally drops the megabyte. It splats on the floor, and the cat comes, licks one lick on his favorite cheese, and carries on.
That's a classic sibling moment. You think you're going to get something special, and then fate steps in. It's funny how quickly things can turn around. Your brother's pride in that megabyte probably vanished when the cat just dismissed his favorite cheese. At least he learned a lesson about sharing in a pretty memorable way. Makes you think twice before being stingy, especially with food.
This happened a couple weeks ago, but a group of us were in my college dorm, double room, so it was spacious, and two of us were hungry. My roommate and I had a huge stash of instant noodles, and we're pretty used to making them on late nights with our kettle when we had to study. So fast forward 5 minutes. We're waiting for our instant noodles to finish cooking, and my roommate trips over his bowl and knocks his noodles all over our carpeted college dorm floor. All of us laughed at him, but I was definitely the one cracking up the most. As I roared in laughter, my headphone cord plugged into my laptop dragged and caught my bowl of noodles. I sat there in sadness as I saw my instant karma pay off.
That's a classic college moment. You're just trying to enjoy some late-night snacks, and then chaos unfolds. It's funny how quick karma hits. One moment you're laughing at your roommate, and the next, you're part of the disaster too. Those noodle spills are no joke, especially on a carpet. Good times though. Sharing food adventures like that is what makes college memorable. You'll definitely remember those noodle nights.
My ex-fiancée and I bought a house. A week after I moved us in, along with my 2 kids, he decided to cheat on me and leave me for another girl. He then changed the locks on me with everything I owned inside. It was hard, but I got my kids and I moved into a better house. A day after I moved out, his house was broken into and they took everything. Guns, computer, flat screen, you name it, they took it.
That's a tough situation to be in. It's wild how quickly things can turn around. You try to build a life with someone, and then they pull the rug out from under you. But it sounds like you handled it well, getting yourself and the kids out to a better place. And then karma hits him right after. Life has a funny way of balancing things out sometimes.
I was waiting in line to place a drink order at a bar back in college. This frat kid starts shoving me out of the way to try to get in line next. I turn around, obviously pissed off, and he just says something stupid and flashes a grin and goes to get a drink. Turns out his card gets declined, and I watch him awkwardly tell the girl he was with that he couldn't afford the drink. Karma fulfilled.
That's classic. You're just trying to enjoy a night out, and this guy thinks he can just push you aside. It's wild how quickly things can turn. He thought he was all cool, but then reality hit him. Seeing him in that awkward moment must have been satisfying. Makes you realize that some people don't think before they act, and life has a way of balancing things out.
Was driving through a school zone when I see an Audi swerve through the traffic at well over the speed limit. Usually there are never any cops on patrol, but this day a motorcycle cop was sitting at the curb just waiting. It was AO gratifying to watch the cop's lights come on and him slide up behind that speeder.
I had a similar moment once. I was waiting at a red light when an SUV sped by like it owned the road. I thought for sure nothing would happen, but out of nowhere, a cop appeared from a side street. It was satisfying to see him pull the driver over. Just a reminder that sometimes, karma has a way of showing up when you least expect it.
I was in heavy rush hour traffic one evening, and some asshole on a crotch rocket motorcycle came up behind me, weaving in and out of the lanes, riding up the center of traffic, and generally being an unsafe asshole. He passed between my truck and the car next to me. Then suddenly up ahead, an unmarked sedan pulled to the shoulder. A uniformed police officer jumped out, and he pointed straight at the guy to pull over. It was awesome.
That sounds pretty wild. Always interesting when things get chaotic like that. It's nice to see someone getting called out for dangerous driving. I've seen close calls like that too, and it can be pretty nerve-wracking. It's a reminder that reckless behavior on the road doesn't always go unnoticed. Can't help but appreciate the timing of the cops showing up just when it mattered.
Was stuck in epic 279 traffic in Maryland and had been so for about an hour when a lady in a Mercedes truck cuts me off and flips me the bird. Lady, we aren't going anywhere. Why are you mad at me? I think myself. Well, this trailblazing thing for herself cuts across the grass median on the highway and tries to pull onto the opposite side of the highway. Whoop whoop, gets pulled over. It was when I started to believe in God.
It's wild how road rage can escalate. Being stuck in traffic already sucks, and then to deal with someone acting out like that? Cutting across the median was a bold move. But then getting pulled over? Seems like karma had its way of showing up. That's a moment that really makes you think twice about how people react in frustrating situations. Sometimes, unexpected events can lead to some pretty profound realizations.
I was in the inside lane of two left-turn lanes, with a lady on her cell phone and her SUV to my right. The left turn signal went green, and we both proceeded to turn. Rather than turn into her corresponding lane, she turned into my lane, forcing me onto a path toward the center median. I honked and had to brake to a stop, and she never took notice. Before I could even accelerate out of the intersection, I saw lights and heard a siren, and the lady got pulled over. A cop had been somewhere behind us the whole time and evidently saw the whole thing. Instant justice.
That's an interesting story. It's always wild when something like that happens, especially when you're just trying to make a turn. It's good to know the cops were around, though. They probably saved you from dealing with the hassle of a potential accident. The fact that she didn't even notice shows how caught up people can get in their phones. Just another day on the road, I guess.
My ex-best friend got insanely jealous because the boy she liked me. And I didn't like him. So she hovers over my phone whenever I get a text, talks shit behind my back to him, and we are no longer friends. I get new and better friends. She's all alone and tries to win me back, and I blow her off. Dumbass.
Sounds like a pretty rough situation. Friendships can change fast over jealousy. It's good you moved on to better friends. Sometimes, it's not worth keeping people around who don't support you. It's a shame she didn't realize that. You just have to take care of yourself and surround yourself with those who bring positivity.
One of my roommates used to eat all the food in the kitchen. One night he came late at night, around 3 a.m., and found some pancakes. He ate a lot of them, and I'm talking about 8 medium-sized pancakes. They were wheat pancakes we made with some leftover pot. The next day, he went to work high as fuck. Anyway, he kept eating our food.
That's a classic case. It's wild how food can turn the simplest situations into memorable stories. Your roommate probably had a pretty interesting day at work. It's a good thing he didn't wreck his job over pancakes. It's funny how some people don't think twice about finishing off leftovers. You have to wonder if he ever realized what he was eating. Guess it didn't stop him from eating everyone's food though.
Pretty girl in the year above at school loved to humiliate me. The worst was her habit of putting chewing gum in my hair daily. It was mortifying. Years later, she's in a council house, working for KFC and mothering twins. The twins' father left them a week ago. Meanwhile, I'm studying at one of the UK's top universities, overachiever, part-time employment at an international marketing company, and complete gym junkie. Damn, I love my life.
It's funny how things turn out. Back in school, that girl thought she was on top, but now life has flipped the script. I guess you never know where people will end up. It's like a reminder that stuff doesn't always stay the same. I mean, the whole gum and hair thing was terrible, but it seems like I've done alright for myself. Just goes to show that hard work pays off. Life's wild that way.
Small but good. 2 crazy loud 18 or 19-year-old women pile onto the full bus I'm riding without paying their fare and ignore the driver when he calls back at them to pay. Apparently not having much of a disciplinary leg to stand on. The driver drops the issue and continues on his route when the women pretend not to hear him. They sit in priority seating amongst the olds and have a loud laughing conversation. I shit you not, lawnmower caliber decibels. I'm pissed because of proximity alone, but I think everybody's probably pissed. Out of seemingly nowhere, a middle-aged man, obviously drunk off his ass and barely able to stand, addresses them and begins a one-sided conversation with one of the now visibly uncomfortable women. They quiet right the fuck down and politely smile and nod through their 15-minute bus journey, exchanging confused glances all the while, not knowing quite how to navigate this unexpected twist in their commute. The moment drunk guy releases them from his hypnotic spell, they silently exit at the next stop. Glorious.
I was on a crowded bus once when a couple of loud teens jumped on without paying. They were laughing loudly and ignoring the driver. Everyone around was annoyed. Then, an obviously drunk guy started talking to one of them. They went quiet and just smiled, clearly uncomfortable. It was kind of hilarious how they suddenly knew how to behave. They got off at the next stop, probably relieved.
Was out at a bar with a buddy of mine I hadn't seen in years. He sees 2 girls at the bar and goes to the bartender and has him deliver a round on us. They get the drinks and the bartender points to us. We smile and nod. Guess they didn't like what they saw. One busts up laughing, the other looks like she just smelled a fart. So they pick up their drinks and start to head for the door. Before they leave, the bouncer, who isn't going to let them leave with the glasses, steps in front of the door. They're looking at us, so they don't see him. Bang, they're wearing the drinks instead of drinking them. My friend and I start laughing our asses off, as do several other people who saw what happened. Best $10 we spent all night.
Sounds like a wild night. It's funny how things can change in seconds. Your buddy trying to impress those girls backfired pretty hard. But hey, at least you both had a good laugh about it. It's moments like that which make a night out memorable. Just a reminder that not everything goes as planned. And sometimes, it's just better to enjoy the chaos.
please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.